Well, hey there! Continuing our series of conversations, I sat down with a couple of college students and asked them about life and about college and about maintaining their faith in an environment like college that isn't necessarily conducive to growing in your walk with Christ. It was a great conversation. We also talked about Star Wars, but I'll leave that for another video. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. Here is my conversation with Blaine Doeden and Jonathan Sternke. Here we go. All right, so let's just dive right in here. So the first question I want to ask you: what were your expectations about college, and what it would be like? Um, as a graduated senior, Blaine, you're fresh off of this, obviously. Jonathan, you're a little bit further out of high school, but what were your expectations as a graduated senior in high school going into college, and then how different was it in reality, or was it different, or kind of what did college end up being like based on what your expectations were, or was there any shift in that? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so just to clarify, is this like related to like how our faith would work in college, or just the general college experience?
Either way, general college experience, but also I think I'd like to hear your perspective on, what is it going to be like outside of youth group and the structure of church and my home church growing up, and how what is my expectation going into college, and how that changed when you actually got to college too. So,
Okay. Um, so I think the biggest expectation and thing that I was thinking about going into college would be the freedom that comes with it. When you're separated from home and you're kind of on yourself. That's what a lot of college kids talk about most when they come back. I have my two older siblings, and that's kind of what they spoke about, is having that freedom and the choices that come with it, where the choices, how you spend your time, and especially with the emphasis on faith and how that transitions into this next part of life, is all dependent on those choices. So my expectation was having a lot more of that individuality and being able to kind of choose where the next part of my life goes on with. And I think that was a big part of the emphasis with faith again, that where my future with the faith would go would be dependent on the first choices that I made on campus. It's important for me to try to find a church home and, try to get involved with some of the on-campus church activities like crew or whatever might be found across campuses. So just kind of my expectation going in was looking to find the right choices as soon as I can and try to kind of find myself on a right path and not try to get straight away. If that makes sense.
mm-hmm. And so after your freshman year of college, then having experienced your first year of college, how difficult was it, or different was it, now that you've gone through that first year of college?
Yes and no. I mean, they speak about that you have a lot of freedom, but there's also a lot that you have to do at college. I mean, with a lot of classes and, that being the bulk of your time, but also trying to find time for being able to stay fit and finding physical activity and just time to relax. Although you have a lot of freedom in your choices, you don't have maybe as much free time as you'd expect. Even though you spend all your hours on campus, if you're doing it right, you should be spending a lot of that studying and maybe not having as many of that so-called freedom that a lot of people talk about. So that might just kind of be something, as I might have overestimated the amount of free time and, wiggle room that I had with my schedule.
Jonathan, how about you?
Oh man. Okay. So my last couple years in high school, I did PSEO here at Minnesota West, online classes, and a couple there too. So I kind of got a feeling of like a different schedule where I only had to be classes at certain times during the day, and a lot more freedom that came with it. So going into like college after high school, I thought it'd be pretty similar to that. And so there's also a lot of different areas where you form expectations, like schoolwork. With my experience here, I didn't think I was going to have to worry too much about it. And then like friends, I figured that I just make friends through classes, and yeah, and with church and faith and everything, I just figured that like I would find a church pretty quick, call it home, and then I'd be set. but yeah, I definitely was. It was very different than I expected going up to college, up to the university. Um, for one, that university is ginormous. Um, I think more people live there at the university than Worthington. And
Well,
so,
because you're at the U of M, right?
yeah, University of Minnesota. So yeah, it's ginormous. So I wasn't ready for that, but also the biggest thing that was not like close to my expectations was the friend group, because since the school's so big, every class I have every semester is just with completely different people. Like I'm used to just seeing like the same people every day,
Mm.
but these lecture halls are like 200 people, 200 students in there, and it's just constantly different. And so that's the biggest thing that I had like to get used to at college, was just being able to make friends and like try to keep the same friends over multiple semesters, even though I don't see them as often. So that was a pretty big thing, because yeah, the social life is definitely a big part of the college experience. But also, um, I think the university is known as being, I don't know how to like put this, like they are accepting of everybody, but like Christianity isn't the big thing there. You know what I mean? It's a very liberal college, and so everybody from everywhere goes there. But I don't find it very easy to speak about my faith in like a general class setting. And so that's another thing that I wasn't really used to, because most of my classmates here at the high school were all going to church. Like no matter what, I could at least relate to them on that level. Like everybody I knew was going to church. And so that was another thing that was definitely very different. It took some getting used to. And actually, I didn't find a good Christian group until this year. And so I went a couple years where I was just going to church with my sister and didn't really find my own thing. And so I think that's very important to do, is to really like not rely on anybody else, but like find something for yourself. And like Blaine was saying, it's really a lot of being like your own individual, and yeah, figuring something out for yourself. And because that's the whole thing, you're getting more freedom at college, you're figuring out how to be your own person, so you got to like make these decisions.
So talk about this a little bit. It goes into our second question a little bit, and you mentioned this a little bit. What has made it difficult, or has there anything made it difficult or easier to grow in your walk with Christ, or continue, growing in your faith during, now that you're away from home and out of youth group, and the structure that high school and youth group provides, and finding your own church family and your own faith formation group? What are some of the significant ways that you found to be really helpful in that, or like you said, you found something this year? What is the thing that helped you find a group this year? And Blaine, if you found a good faith group, what are some of the helpful ways that you've been able to find that church home, or a group of people who you can grow with, and or what has made it really difficult to do that?
So I think something that's makes it difficult is that it's really hard to stumble across something, like stumble across a faith group, or stumble across people or friends that share your faith. Or at least it was in my experience. It might not be the same with some of the smaller universities, but so yeah, it's really hard to stumble. And if you like to stumble across a faith group, and if you really want to like experience that and actually get involved with the group, you had to seek it out. And so yeah, my first couple of years in college, I just didn't seek it out. I just called it good, going to my sister, with going to church with my sister. And then it was towards the end of my sophomore year that I really like wanted to find my own thing. And so all I did really was, we have this website at the university, where it just lists all the student groups that's available, and there's a ton, there's hundreds. But I just went through all of them and just tried to find all the Christian student groups, and I found this group called Chi Alpha. I don't know if they offer it at your university, Blaine, but it's just like Crew.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's like a group called Crew. But anyways, their main thing is just having a group of just Christians, and every Thursday, they have like a church type service where there's like worship and it's kind of like a sermon, I guess. And then you also can get plugged in with a small group of like they separate guys and girls. So I'm in a small group of guys, and we meet every Tuesday night. And we even kept meeting throughout the end of the semester via Zoom calls.
nice.
So that was really cool. But yeah, and so that really helped me become like stronger in my faith, because then I could see how other people going to my same university in my same situation are handling these different things that I also have to handle. And then yeah, and just finding like brotherhood and having somebody to talk to just in that same situation is really nice. So yeah.
So yeah, kind of building off what Johnny said, or finding that community is something that's really important on campus. And oftentimes it's not something that you just stumble upon, but it's something you actually have to like seek out. It's something I really found. I tried to get onto it early with, Crew is probably the biggest organization on campus and the one that I was mostly affiliated with outside of like Sunday church. Ours met on like Wednesday nights, and they kind of had a worship service, like they said. But a part of that, as I found, is that the other aspects of college sometimes don't always mix with, allowing your faith to grow. Because, I have tests on Thursday that I have to study for. So, maybe I just skip out on Crew, or, all my friends are going to go play volleyball. It might be nice just to go bond with them a little more. So it's definitely were some challenges in trying to make the time that, which I found this year is, you want to take in all of college, and sometimes that faith might feel like that home part and something that you're used to, but really trying to find the dedication in yourself, taking the time for it, and really just saying, all things set aside, these 2 hours is for on a Wednesday night and Sunday mornings especially. There were some challenges there, but I do think part of that helps you grow is when the faith's in your own hands and you have to make the decisions instead of, your parents calling you to church like when you're in high school. When it's your own decisions and it's resting on you whether or not you actually do it, there's something that when it's your individual self, it really makes a strength in your faith. So yeah, finding that Christian community and, even doing things outside of, church activities, whether that's they would meet and play basketball and whatnot within that Crew family, was just a really strengthening part of it as well. Just kind of finding a community to fit with and being in the presence of others in a community is something that can really help strengthen a faith and discuss.
I like that. I think that's so important to realize is that, in high school you have, it's not that, as an older high schooler you were made to go to church or whatever. But if you weren't going to church with your family or you're going to youth group, it's kind of like, hey, what's going on there, kind of a deal, And there was that kind of expectation, right? And outside of youth group in high school, once you're in college, there's no one that expects that of you. Like you said, Johnny, you're at University of Minnesota's giant campus, secular university, and people sometimes might look at you sideways if you do go to church. And so there's definitely not that pressure and the expectation of, you have to go to youth group or church. And so I like that you both said, you have to be really intentional about seeking this out and making time for it. So what specifically, what are some ways that you were intentional about seeking it out? I know, Johnny, you said that there was lists of college groups or whatever on your campus. Blaine, did you have something similar, or did you just say, I'm going to go to Crew, or how did you find a home church or a Sunday church or that group of friends to hang out with and do stuff? Was it just through Crew, or was it some other avenue?
Well, let's see. I mean, I was familiar with Crew prior to coming to campus. I had some experience through my siblings, so that was the organization I was familiar with, and I just kind of went and sought that out on the stay, because I thought it was important to kind of try to establish roots in the Christian community on campus as soon as I could. So just kind of already having prior knowledge coming in was something that I didn't really have to seek out, but just kind of already was familiar with, which made the process of finding it a little easier. Also, I was lucky enough to have some friends of mine in high school who joined me at St. Cloud who shared in the Christian faith. So just kind of having some people before you even make friends on campus that shared in your faith that could kind of accompany you and help make the process of going to crew a little easier and less, scary. But also, on campus and being able to meet some people that, happen to share faith with you. Like Johnny said, Christianity isn't the most popular thing on campus, and it's not very readily acceptable in common conversation. So it can be kind of hard to find that community of people and within your peer group. Of course, if you go to, church events, you're going to run into Christians. But as far as the populace as a whole, it's a lot less common to find someone who's very open about their faith. So just kind of a way I found is if you're open about it, sometimes you'll get a little more feedback rather than vice versa. But it was definitely trial and error with finding a firm church family. That was probably the biggest one. I tried a couple of churches the first couple of weeks, and then, after about 3 or 4 weeks in, I found one that had similar messages to the home church and, music and other stuff that I liked that I've kind of been attending for the rest of the semester. But yeah, it's definitely some trial and error to it, where you will find things that you like and don't like, and people that you agree with, people you don't agree with, and kind of making your way through and holding through until you kind of settle.
Talk a little bit about I'm curious to hear a little bit more your perspective on just how you deal with the secular mindset and worldview, and the pressure that creates either in your classes or in social groups, hanging out or whatever, with other people who don't share the same faith that you do. Have you met any opposition or pressure to, I don't know, talk about your conversations that you've had with people, or not conversations that you've had with people about faith? And have you felt challenged in any way? Have you felt your perspective on faith has been challenged, and how did you deal with that at all? Either in classes from professors or just from your peer group or whomever.
I think that a big thing at my university is a lot of people have a wrong view of Christianity. Mostly because there's a couple groups, I don't know what they're doing, but I don't know if any of you have heard of this, but they'll literally stand out just in the middle of campus, while people are walking to classes, holding up signs saying oh, you're all going to hell unless you do this, which technically, I mean, it's not wrong that they're saying that.
It's not untrue.
Yeah, but it's very it sends a very hateful message, which all of a sudden when they see that, they're like, oh wow, Christianity, they're just here to judge me. They're just here to dish out judgment, and they don't want to even they don't even care about me. And so I think that people are they have that preconceived notion of Christianity, so that if they ever catch wind that I'm Christian, they're like, oh, all of a sudden they have this view of me that they don't even know me. So one thing I've found is that I do a lot more listening rather than chiming in right away, with whatever they're saying, because a lot of the time their views don't align with mine. If we're having a serious political or whatever conversation and certain issues come up, I see that their views don't align with mine. And if I were just to go right in and be like, no, you're wrong, that's just gonna bring a lot of argument that I don't want. So I do a lot of listening, and I try to chime in with my view, because a lot of times, once they hear my view and how I explain it, they're not they don't totally disagree. You know what I mean? Like, I think most of the time, yeah, they're just stuck in this preconceived notion of what Christianity is, that they don't really know what it is. And so, yeah, that's what I've found most of the time.
What is your experience been, Blaine?
So, I mean, I've definitely run into a fair share of people that don't hold faith, but I found that a vast majority aren't necessarily against it. I just don't think they've ever had that interaction with it that's kind of led them to the right track, where a lot of people interact with. Now, my campus is probably a little less what you'd consider a liberal compared to Johnny's, but a lot of the people I've talked to are actually pretty open to it and won't like outright reject the notion of it. Like, you can bring up that, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, I have, a relationship with Christ, and they'll usually listen to you. I mean, you'll definitely run into people that are a little more directly against it and past the notion. But, usually they don't hold it against you, which I've found to be a very good thing. Like, I still have friendships with people that would be considered atheist, I suppose, but it's more of a kind of agree to disagree, where they won't, completely denounce you and any ties they have with you because of your faith. So I found my experiences were pretty open with my faith, where I felt I could discuss it. It's just not always the most welcome or popular opinion. But just because that a majority of the people don't agree with me doesn't mean that they will reject what I'm saying outright.
What about in your classes and stuff? Have you faced anything from your professors? Or there's been movies and stuff made about kids standing up
Yeah.
for professors and the professors being like bad evil professors. Have you experienced any of that in your classes specifically, or have the professors all been pretty respectful opinions, or has it not really come up at all?
I would say, at least for me so far, it hasn't really come up. I mean, I haven't any professors like shown in any movies that challenge your faith and force you to do anything crazy for having the Christian faith. You can definitely tell there's some professors that probably reject it. I mean, it's not that the conversation's ever come up or we've had any debates, but just on some comments they make, or, even what they study. Like, I had a professor who was a PhD in like anthropology, so you can probably make an educated guess about where their beliefs are and what their opinions are. But it hasn't really come up in class too much in any way that would hinder my education, or, has been any sort of challenge. It usually kind of stays out of the classroom.
Yeah, it's pretty similar with me. I take mostly like math and science classes, so it's not really a big discussion anyways, for the most part. But a couple, I think, what was it? I took some cultural education class my freshman year, and that's the only time I actually ever like experienced anything like that. And even when it was, the professor was still very respectful of all views. I just noticed that he kind of like made his lesson plan on different topics that were like very prevalent at the time, and could like definitely go against what my views are as a Christian. But again, even in his like what he was saying about it and everything, he was still made it known that he was very respectful, and like it's okay to have a different opinion. And even like if I were to write a paper showing my view and my opinion, like it wouldn't be docked any points or anything because I was stating what I thought. So yeah, I didn't see any really big adverse effects on with professors, other than that, just like some subtle remarks that they would make every once in a while, where you can just tell that they have a different view. But yeah, that's about it.
There wasn't any big Hollywood moments where you were able to stand in front of the class.
No.
Okay. All right. Anything else you guys wanted to say about that kind of, your walk with Christ, or anything that's really any advice that you would give to the college students as they're trying to figure out how to grow in Christ, or anything else before we keep moving on here to a different question?
I noticed that as you make friends and as you become closer with those friends, they're very more apt to like hear out your viewpoints and hear out your belief system. Um, because like, for example, my roommates actually, um, I've been living with them for 3 years, and I think it was last year or this year, was maybe. Anyways, we actually got on this topic of discussion of like views and on religion, and one of my roommates is atheist, and I'm obviously Christian, and he just like asked me about it, and I think we were watching a movie, and he's like, "Don't Christians believe this?" I don't remember what he said, but it wasn't right, and I kind of just like explained it to him and explained like what um I believe, what the Christian faith believes about it, and I just found he was very curious, which is really interesting because like he describes himself as an atheist, but I don't think he's really thought through the whole belief system, like beliefs yet. And
Sure.
so I think that is pretty common actually, that a lot of the people in college are still trying to figure out what they really believe. And so they're curious to actually like see somebody who is strong in a Christian faith and like the reasons why, and for them to actually explain to them and show them what the faith is. So yeah, I think that once you make those friends and once you become close enough where they really value your input and what you have to say, then it gets a lot easier to really like share the Christian faith with them.
Cool. I think that's really important to remember too. I mean, I think that's true across the board, especially as you get older. Well, even with the younger kids too. There's always the old saying, and it's super cliche. Where people say, "Oh, they don't care what you know until they know how much you care," but it's really true. Like you can. It's the same thing with the people standing in the comments with the signs. If you're just slapping them in the face with this hateful sign, they're not going to care what you say. But if you care about them and you build a relationship with them, then you have then permission to speak into their life and speak truth to them. I think that's really cool. I think that's really important to remember. So, if there was one thing, or several things, I don't know, whatever. If there's something that you could go back in time and tell yourself at the end of your senior year, what would it be?
But as far as like faith related thing, I would maybe want to tell myself is to try not to be so scared to like be open about it. For a while there, I was worried that if I was overly open about it and talked about it too much, that might hinder some of like the making friends part of it. It's like, oh, I don't want to hang out with him. He only talks about his faith and Christianity. And like, although it might be kind of cliche to like say, be like, oh, be more open and make sure to share your faith. I really do feel like if I would have started off being kind of open and talking about my faith, I would have been able to bond a lot more with some of the other people that shared my faith and just didn't really know about my faith until we got close together. And just having that extra time with them that we could have maybe discussed each other's religions and faiths and being able to kind of grow together would have been some valuable time that I might have missed out on. And who knows, if I could have went back and did it over, I maybe would have hoped that I could have told myself to be a little more outputting and just courageous with it.
All right. For me, I think I would say I would advise myself to get out of my comfort zone more because yeah, leaving high school and going to this huge college with thousands of people I don't know, it's really easy just to like hang out with your roommates and stay inside and not like go out and try to find something. And so I think I would advise myself to like, yeah, definitely go out of my comfort zone and go looking for that community that is already prevalent here when you're at home. Because yeah, I think that like we kind of touched on before, you're not going to experience something if you don't go out and look for it, because again, you're not made to do anything there. Like it's all individual, it's all you choosing. And so yeah, definitely I would just say, because like I said, I didn't find a Christian group until this last year, and this is my third year. And so I would definitely would have rather that I found this group my freshman year and been growing with the group for the last 2 years. But yeah, I'm glad that I found it now, but that would have been a lot nicer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's good. That's good. So what can we do, talking about your home church or just kind of the people here that know you and are not, in college with you? Is there anything that we can do to help you and encourage you, or we're praying for you? Is there anything specific that we can do, either as students, your youth group friends, or you just as leaders and adults in the congregation here? What is something that we can do for you to help encourage you? And is there anything praying, just specific ways that we can pray for you?
Well, I'd say the church is doing some good things right now, which is especially when like we come home and just kind of going to that Sunday with the church family again is kind of just like a breath of fresh air. Seeing the familiar faces and having a lot of the people who will check up on you, is just kind of being surrounded by that community again, kind of just helps give you a little extra boost when you return back home, whether you're returning for just a weekend or over break, So that right there, the church is doing really well, and just to continue to like check up on us and ask us how our college is going is just really, it does a lot to help kind of push me forward at least, and try to keep my faith strong as I go back. But otherwise, the church just giving prayers for us to be courageous and to try to be lights in the world and for Christ, and doing the message that he says. Just anything helps, and it goes a long way in college, just as they try to pray for us and keep us in their thoughts just best they can as a kind of support group for our a ways away,
Yeah, I definitely agree with Blaine. I love coming back home and seeing a ton of familiar faces when a lot of the time I'm surrounded by people I don't know. But yeah, it's really nice to come back and just see everybody and have people catch up with me and see how everything's going. But also, like Blaine said, while I'm gone and at college, I think just prayers are very very good to have. Just praying for wisdom and praying for me to be able to just have good community up here and feel at home away from home is really important to me. And I think honestly, it's so encouraging when I hear that somebody's praying for me, and like somebody is really is thinking about me. Even like that's just such a good thing to hear, and hearing that, it just brightens my day up right away. And so yeah, it's I think that's the biggest thing for me. But yeah, that's about it.
Well, that's all the questions I have. You guys have anything else you want to talk about?
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Hey,